Good afternoon, watching this week's episode of Safety Culture Solutions, brought to you by Safety Culture Strategies. I'm Mike Kinney, your host, and throughout the weeks we have a lot of amazing featured guests. I get to stand on the shoulder of giants, kind of philosophically speaking. They bring the best on insight of techniques, theories, and also how at the practitioner level to truly make a difference in what's going on in your organization. And today we are so pleased to have with us Mr. Paul Esposito. He's based out of Annapolis, Maryland, and since 1997, he's been president of Star Consultants Incorporated. With over 40 years of technical expertise, Paul has led HEC consulting organizations for over 32 years and has a master's in health and safety from Johns Hopkins University. Yeah, he's kind of a player. From 2007 to 2012, he was vice president and practice leader of management system assessments for ESIS Incorporated, the consulting arm of ACE Insurance Company. Paul is also a certified safety professional, yay, a certified industrial hygienist, and check this out, also a certified auditor for ISO 45001, Occupational Health and Safety Management Systems. His previous non-consulting employment includes the Department of Defense, U.S. Coast Guard Shipyards, and insurance companies. And we said based in Annapolis, he assists STAR customers worldwide with the implementation, delivery, and assessments, audits, capabilities of each programs and regulations. Examples include developing of strategic planning, leading metrics, oh, I love those discussions, including risk-based metrics utilizing a balanced scorecard approach, organizational culture, risk management, and management systems. And Paul, I am thrilled to have you on the show today, sir. Welcome aboard, so to speak.
Mike, I'm very glad to be here, and thank you very much for hosting me.
You betcha. And Paul and I've had the chance to talk before, and I was teasing many, many years ago. I'd say, well, I'm going to go down that ASP, CSP journey, and one of the many books and plethora of documents I was reading, they had your name scattered all the way through it. So you were directly responsible, sir, for me being able to achieve my CSP. Thank you so much for your help.
Oh, I'm glad I could do what little I could. Thank you.
And the BCSB, Board of Certified Safety Professionals, that's the magic cube that pulls all this together. And you have been a mentor to them for quite a while, as I understand, sir.
I have been working with ASSP as well as AIHA throughout the years in a number of different capacities. Absolutely.
Perfect. And so for some of the elder statesmen out there listening and viewing each week, if you haven't had the chance to offer some of your services to these different organizations that Paul could attest, I'm sure they'd be thrilled to hear from you. So we kind of talked about what all you guys do, which is a bunch. So when you're working with your different companies, what's some attributes that you would recognize of a positive safety culture?
And Rick, Mike, as you know, positive culture and positive safety culture are really the same things, aren't they?
Yes, sir.
So I look at a positive safety culture as one, to put it real succinctly, that celebrates success versus failure. When people work hard, they put a lot of effort into things, and it may not get you exactly all the way that you want to go, but you made progress. And I think companies that recognized that progress and continual improvement is really the goal. And of course, we have stretch goals. I did a lot of consulting with General Electric. They always had stretch goals for everybody. And that, Six Sigma is a classic stretch goal topic area. 3.4 deficiencies per million opportunities. Those are the things that we really see with companies that have a positive culture. And I can give you a couple of examples if you don't mind. I mean, I did some work with LL Bean for years. You can tell just by talking to their employees on the phone that they feel positive about working for LL Bean, at least most of them, right? Because they do. They treat them well. And what do I mean by treating them well? They celebrate. They celebrate with their people. They celebrate their successes. And I'm not talking about, any kind of huge barbecue or anything like that,
Right.
although those are nice.
Yeah.
They're nice to have, but even, smaller success stories.
Perfect.
And the other thing about celebrating a success, it has to be timely.
Yes.
You can't wait like, oh, we had a success last March. Let's celebrate at Christmas time. Oh, no, or December.
No.
Sorry. That's not going to nobody's going to really make that connection.
It's interesting you mentioned LL Bean. When my prior guest had been working with them, and they said they had been pursuing the VPP Star certification. And when she traveled when she was traveling to the different locations, you could almost feel the difference at the sites that achieved Star certification versus the ones that were still working on it.
It was tangible. And
Really?
actually, that's what I was helping them do at the time, right before Deb came on board.
Right. Yes. It is a small world. So I got to back up here a little bit. So when you were speaking to employees on the phone at LL Bean, just through the phone, you could get a sense of just how supportive they were of the culture. What was some of those cues just based off a phone call?
I think it comes from years and years of interviewing people during audits, whether those interviews are on the phone or not. But I've heard it said that if you smile while you're talking on the phone, people can hear the difference.
Guarantee it.
I felt it.
Good for you.
I felt it.
It's funny you mention that because I have the pleasure. I'm also a benefit charity auctioneer. I've done a lot of voiceover. When you smile and you're in studio with all the big microphones, you're right. It changes your voice a little bit in a good way.
Somehow it carries. It does.
Okay, so for the business leaders, like the C-suite people, when you're sitting down with them and they say, Paul, what's a couple of things as a C-suite person I should really focus on to help support our safety culture?
Well, there's three things you have to look at.
Okay.
You have to do first the right thing. Next, you have to have the right reason. And then third, you have to do it well.
Ooh.
So you can have a breakdown at any one of those. But I find that the most critical skill is empathy.
Really?
And empathy for employee engagement. And then, of course, if you piggyback that onto celebrating success, you really are starting to master the concept of a positive culture, right?
Perfect.
So I look for people to really, I've had a lot of, you go in and you say they're doing the right thing, but for the wrong reason, or they're doing the right thing with the wrong tool. So they're not going to get the right results. I had one company, they were having a problem because people were not recognizing hazards. They were out doing job hazard analysis and completely missing hazards. So they said, well, we need a behavior-based safety program for that. And I'm sitting there going, what does identifying behavior have to do with identifying hazards? Especially if you're going to do peer-to-peer or supervisor to worker. If the supervisor doesn't know what the hazards are to begin with,
Good point.
how can they possibly intervene and prevent hazards when they didn't know it to begin with? So we went in and we did this audit, unfortunately, and it was like, it's like delivering and telling somebody their baby is ugly. They were taking a good program and applying it to the wrong problem. It was the wrong solution for that problem statement. And by the end of my briefing, of course, I had to provide a bunch of evidence and everything. By the end of my briefing, they got it.
Good.
But I had to work a whole week to collect enough evidence because I knew they were going to be sort of stubborn about listening to the results.
So that's possibly an example of attempting to do the right thing for the wrong reason?
That was an attempt of doing the right thing applying the wrong tool.
Wrong tools. Okay, good point. Okay.
Applying the wrong tool, they didn't do it well. So they had a good thing, It was nice to have it come from the supervisors,
Sure.
but they didn't do it correctly. They didn't use behavior observations to identify hazards, new hazards, ones they didn't know about. That was their guilt. That was their problem.
Good point. So have you got
They
a
just
handy,
scoped it out wrong.
so have you got a handy example of doing the right thing for the wrong reason? Because I like that phrase. It intrigues me.
Oh, there's tons of them. So a lot of people talk about leading metrics nowadays, and
Yes,
one
sir.
of the key leading metrics is this term called SIF, significant incidents and fatalities.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And it's a good thing to measure SIFs because SIFs, if you analyze them and measure them, can give you an immense amount of data from which to have lessons learned and then continual improvement. So there's one company, they said, yeah, our people just heard, I'm teaching a class at ASSP on risk assessment. They said, yeah, our company just started doing SIF analysis, but it's failing. I don't like that idea. I said, why is it failing? And the key was they were looking to reduce the number of SIFs.
There you go.
So you set the wrong goal. The goal is until we know how many SIFs we have, we can't set reduction goals. I have to actually increase the volume. And LL Bean was another success story with that. They
Excellent.
said, well, let's collect maintenance work orders from people, ideas and suggestions. And we said, time out. You have an engaged workforce. If you ask for it, you're going to get it.
And you got to
And I
respond.
said, you better be prepared to respond. They ended
Yes.
up after the first month with 615 suggestions after the first month.
Wow.
And they were like, time out. We need 3 months to close these. But they did. They reacted the
Good for
right
them.
way.
Good for them.
Yeah.
Because, and working just like yourself and with different organizations, I tell them, I say, it's commendable that you want to pursue getting employees engaged and getting recommendations, suggestions, but it's a critical that you respond. Now, you may not be able to do exactly what they wanted, but as long as they know, right? Because then
Sometimes the answer is no.
exactly. Because it's not
give them an
uncommon, Paul, if I'm part of your team and I give you an idea and I hear bupkis, I'm probably going to maybe give it one more try or give you a different suggestion because I'm a little bit stubborn and tenacious that way. But if I don't hear after probably 2 or 3 times, odds are I'm not going to suggest any more stuff.
Absolutely.
And people go,
And then that just creates the void of people that are even willing to be engaged. And that's, for employee engagement to work, we need management engagement first.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Reagan coined it pretty well, top-down theory,
Exactly. And to me, part of that element too, sir, is just being able to establish that level of trust. So when they're asking employees to get engaged, or the boss stops by where they're working on the big press break or whatever type of machinery, that they're comfortable having an open conversation because there's been a little trust established.
And that is so easy to detect when you're doing a management systems audit.
Really?
Because when you ask for an example of when have you gone to management or you talk to management, when was the last time an employee came to you? And they can't give you the example.
Yeah.
You have a gap right there.
Yeah, it's a great example. Currently, I'm helping a client in Colorado. I'm doing a big safety culture assessment for him, lots of interviews. And I said, well, do you have examples of where you've done a work pause or a stop work? And
Right.
sir, almost every one of them's got 2 or 3 examples, and they're excited about it. The way management responded, I'm saying, okay, 2 thumbs up. They're on the right path. And you're talking about the metrics. I've been with some groups. They want to reduce near miss reporting. I said, no, wait a minute. Hold on, because near miss. I said, no. These are all these great opportunities to learn, right? Before you have that SIF,
Yes.
or God forbid a fatality.
Same thing.
Same thing.
Yep.
I says, I want more of them, right? And then they get active. Now, if you get a series of repeats, that's probably may have a challenge with
That's
your corrective
different.
action. That's a
But if you're
different
getting
kettle of
them, you
fish.
can analyze for that, right?
Exactly.
Right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a short break. We're going to be right back, and we're going to learn a whole bunch more with Paul Esposito and what goes on with Star Consulting. Be right back. Stand by.
Safety Culture Strategies provides world-class safety culture and safety program management consultative services for clients throughout the United States. Whether your company is pursuing Voluntary Protection Program STAR designation, ISO 45001 certification, or considering a comprehensive review of your current safety programs and processes, Safety Culture Strategies brings hands-on experience combined with a unique perspective that readily translates from senior management to task-level personnel. This collective skill set provides you with a very insightful health check of your overall safety management system that can also assist with reducing injuries and attrition, as well as increasing profitability. Safety Culture Strategies is also certified to provide Ziegler Institute employee engagement training and leadership coaching. When combined with established relationships with federal and state regulators, Safety Culture Strategies is uniquely positioned to assist the safety culture efforts of any company. For additional information, visit www.scstrat.com or call us at 702-780-1410. After all, every company has a safety culture, but is it the culture you want?
Well, here's a hint. If you reach out to Paul Esposito and Star Consultants, I think they're going to be able to help you get the culture that you want, because there's lots of facets of it. And this is not Paul's first rodeo, as my granddaddy would say. So as we kind of come in out of the break, you touched upon VPP. A few weeks ago, I had the pleasure of Terry Schulte being on our show. He's in the chair of VPPA. So from your perception and experience, just what are some of the benefits for a company to pursue VPP certification?
Well, the main benefit, whether it's VPP certification, ISO 45001, ANSI Z10 management systems, is it gives you a systematic approach to really designing your processes. So VPP is very particular about every process having an input, an activity, and an output, and that these processes are going to work together and all around the framework, which is the same framework as ISO 45000 and Z10 of management, commitment, and employee engagement.
Exactly.
The thing that I really like about VPP is there's an element in their management, commitment, and employee engagement that's not in the other two. And that's management accountability.
Yes.
They talk a lot about responsibility, not accountability. And that's really a big deal.
Absolutely.
I just wrote an article for ASSP just in, I think it was in March, on accountability.
Perfect.
For safety and health. And the big deal there is accountability can be a positive and should be a positive motivator, right? If you can measure people doing the things you want them to do, then the people that aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing, now that everything's measured and out in the open, become very visible.
Yes.
And so they can't hide under the rocks. So
Exactly.
Right? And
Yes.
your bad players or non-players are no longer able to hide with the masses. So I just, and that's, although I really like the risk assessment part of the management systems, because that's something that OSHA is still trying to get their arms around. I realize they don't have it in VPP, but if you took the accountability from VPP and the risk assessment of management systems, you would really have sort of the best of both worlds.
And I tell you, not to toot my own horn, okay, I will just a little bit. I'm also a certified lead auditor for ISO 45001. Went through Exemplar Global. My registrar is actually in Australia. And I got to be candid, sir, it was one of the tougher exams I've had in quite a while. It was just about up there with CSP, in my humble opinion, because their pass rate is, it's not 100% all the time, that's for sure.
No, and it's funny because I teach those elements and have for years and years and years with ASSP, but I had a customer of mine that required me to have that certification. So I actually had to go back and sit 3 days in a course and take that exam.
Yes.
And, I still found value in another instructor's perspective
Oh, absolutely.
of all of these elements. It was still time well spent to get that certification.
And what I remember, I hope the viewers will bear with us for a second, in that exam, is and even through the 3 days of the course before you set for the exam, is that they really hammered into the importance of recognizing the connectivity between your different management systems and those
Yes.
interactions. And because that, so then you can kind of tree it down, as we used to say with the MORT, with management oversight risk tree for accident investigation. It's all those connectivity of pieces. So we've talked quite a bit. So if I was asking you, what's a couple of good performance measures that senior management should be looking at to help them pulse their safety culture? We're almost talking about leading indicators here. So what do you think about that one, sir?
Well, I'm on the authorship for the rewrite of the ANSI standard, which is coming out on performance measures.
Right.
And I'm writing for that. I also contributed to the AIJ performance measure leading health metrics publication as well. And I can tell you that there's a couple of things that stick out as just absolutely essential metrics. And the first one is closure rate and volumes. If you're coming up with ideas and action plans, I need a volume of them. And then with that volume, they've got to get closed. And the closure rate and the volume is sort of symbiotic metric, right? Another one is measuring risk reduction. And it is an easy way to do that. Real easy way to do that. How many new engineering controls have you put in place? Because if all you do is keep putting in place admin controls and PPE, you're not really reducing risk. So it could be engineering, substitution, et cetera, but anything above that, that is how you measure risk reduction. And third, now you have to measure whether people actually apply those controls. So it's a conformance rate. We all have inspections on our desk. That data, we don't even have to go find it.
It's there.
It's there, but we don't even use it. I don't need, I really don't need a big database or I mean, they help by all means. But I could give 3 months of inspection reports to 2 people on a safety committee, 15 minutes before the meeting, every quarter, and my trend analysis would be done on my conformance rate. It's not that difficult, but for some reason people get real wrapped around the accidents as well. I need permission first to do this. You've been around long enough, like me, Mike. You don't ask. We get things done, and then try to show that it works. And if we have
we'll
to
kind of worry about it later. And you're talking about risk management. I'm a big fan of Mill Standard 882. I kind of like Charlie a little better than Delta. And I tell companies, build a 4x4 or a 5x5 from 1A to 4D and start risk ranking, including severity and probability of the different elements that are part of your work package. And like from you read, I was part of DoD, so I was using that years and years ago. The other thing, what I didn't know then, but I know now, is severity is more important than likelihood. Yes.
And so we get people, so no, don't just analyze risk, analyze your severity. And that's what the SIF is trying to get you to do.
You're absolutely correct.
That is the other part of that equation that I think people, likelihood, it's not likely to happen. Yeah, well,
what if it did?
Well, Paul wasn't likely. Deepwater Horizon wasn't likely.
Thank you.
But they did.
And I've had the pleasure of speaking at many conferences on deep water. I wrap now one on safety culture about it. And I says, literally, some of the senior team was on the platform that morning presenting safety awards for not using a cell phone, use a handrails, keeping a lid on your coffee cup. And
the irony.
And all the irony, but yet some of the lower tier challenges there. I talk about halo effect, some people hesitant to raise their hand, scheduling project pressures. Well, the one to me I think the most stunning out of that is they had 2 of their engineers fly out, like you and I fly out from Nolans to the platform to do a critical test on the consistency of their slurry. Mandatory critical test. You and I show up, and I gathered this reports and talking with people involved. You and I show up on the platform and say, tell you what, guys, we don't have time. We're not going to do it. Go ahead and go back to knowledge. We did.
Whoa.
And we didn't tell anybody.
Right.
We did not tell anybody. Because we had a lot of work on our desk. So there was probably a good 6 to 8 instances. If someone had made a different decision, all indications are that disaster wouldn't have occurred the way it did. So
without a doubt.
With that, I was just at a big safety culture summit here in town fairly recently, and they actually had one of the crew members from Deepwater talk for about 30 minutes on what that was like. So it still resonates.
Awesome.
There wasn't a dry eye in the house. Okay, but we're going to shift gears a little bit. So you've been at this a little while. So as you reflect back, who's some of your favorite mentors that kind of helped guide you and assist you with the trajectory of your incredible career?
I've been very fortunate. I've been very fortunate to have lots of mentors.
Cool.
You know, when you first start, and mentors doesn't always mean employer.
That's right.
Right?
Yep.
They can be associates, they can be friends. In some cases, they've been employees.
Cool.
You know, everybody brings to the table something, either a new perspective or new diversity of opinion or a thought or whatever the case may be. And having been in the consulting world, it's not like you report to the same place every day.
Correct.
You go to a new facility almost every week. You interact with different people, peers, mentors, business people, management types, employees and workers, etc. So I've just been very, very fortunate that as a person who just sort of takes continual learning for granted as something I like to do.
Me too.
I get a lot of mentorship from people that don't even know they're mentoring me.
Good for you. Good for you.
I've always looked at it that way.
Okay, before we get the tail end of this, and
Sure.
a couple more questions. So you have a new client, and it's the C-suite, maybe the president, and he says, well, and you spend a couple of days with him, and he says, okay, sir, what's the number one thing I should focus on as a leader to help our safety culture?
You know, it was interesting. I actually went to a workshop on this.
Oh, cool.
Being in a leadership role, I went to this leadership thing, and it was really interesting because you do this profile just like you do a survey.
Yeah.
They interviewed a bunch of my peers, and they told me what my strengths and weaknesses were. Because everybody has them. Nobody has strengths across the board.
You bet.
So I go in there, and I'm talking with the counselor, and he goes, you know, everybody has weaknesses. He goes, do you know who Ted Williams was? Famous baseball player. You know, one of the best batters in the world. And he goes, you know, he was a so-so third baseman. And you know what he did every day? He worked on his hitting, not his fielding.
Really? Okay.
Yes. So this just really sat with me, and I got to practice it then for a couple of years afterward because I was still part of this organization. And they said, focus on your strengths. Now, your strengths have to be compatible with doing the right thing the right way, et cetera, right?
Yep.
But if you have a weakness, you can work on it, but focus on your strengths. And when you take your strengths and convert that back into celebrating success,
there you go,
and employee engagement,
perfect,
and focus on the niche that makes your company's culture what it needs to be. Not 5,000 things.
Perfect.
Not 10 things. Not 5 things. Maybe 1, 2, or 3 things. You're going to have so much a better chance of success. So, you know, we were talking this. I was in this one plant manager's office, and I went and go out and talk to some of he had some safety committees. He's really trying to do employee involvement.
Yep.
And he put this employee team together, some of his best employees. And he put them in a room, gave them a task, and said, here's some money we want you to spend money and develop employee engagement suggestions and ideas for us. 3 months later, I go in and interview this committee. They haven't done a thing. And you ask yourself, why? Right. And then you go and interview them and you find out they value the trust that this plant manager gave them so much that they didn't want to make a wrong step.
Oh.
The plant manager did not give them anybody to help them figure out how to spend money. They were blue collar people. They didn't know how to spend corporate money. They didn't know what the boundaries should or shouldn't be. They didn't know any of that stuff. He hamstrung them out of the box.
Wow.
And he goes, I handpicked my best people. I said, you handpicked them and then did the Pontius Pilate.
Yep, you got it.
You got to take your strength, which was good. You engaged right people. They somehow respected you enough that they said yes, and then you dropped them like a hot potato.
It's great analogy and great short story sharing. And usually towards the end of this, I'll say, well, you've been on stage and you did a great talk and you go to leave. What's 2 or 3 points you want to leave with? I think you just did, sir.
Exactly.
So before we ring off, how do people get a hold of you?
All right. starconsultants.net is the best way. Okay. I think you gave them my email at the beginning.
You betcha.
I'm in Annapolis, but I've traveled the world for health and safety and management systems and strategic planning. And nowadays, with technology like you're doing here, Mike, I can still do a lot of those same things, even remotely.
Very good point.
There's no substitute for face-to-face. I get it. But there's still a lot of things we can do remotely to save time and money from being on site.
Exactly correct. Well, sir, thank you so much for being on the show with us. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes this week's episode. And Paul, we'll say goodbye till next time. I know we're going to have him back. That's a hint. So everybody goes, Mike, how do we get a hold of you? Well, it's pretty easy. You can visit my website, www.scstrat.com. Send me an email. I make it easy, mike@scstrat.com, or call my office, 702-780-1410. Until next time, celebrate those small successes and make sure that you have trust of your people. Bye-bye for now.